All right, so now let's take a look at creating a CMA on the RealComp Online system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate over to my RealComp Online and I'm going to click on My CMAs. Now under CMAs, we'll see a list of all the CMAs that I've created in the system, and it's very, very easy to create a brand new one. We've already seen one way, which is, just to recap, from the button bar, I can click on CMA, and what it will do is include all my selected listings in a brand new CMA. Well, I'm not going to take that approach. I'm going to create a brand new CMA from scratch simply by clicking Start a New CMA. And it really couldn't be easier. All we need to do is select who we're going to create the CMA for. So for now, I'm just going to select it for Mr. Budweiser, and I can add an optional description of this CMA if I'd like. But let's go to the second step of this wizard and click on Pages. And here's essentially where we select our pages for a CMA. Now, what I've done is I've actually added a custom page, and it's very, very easy to do that. If you have a custom PDF that you would like to include in your CMA, simply just navigate to the location simply by clicking on the Upload Custom Pages link here, then browse your system for that particular file. And once you have it, you upload that file, and it will upload in the same way that my custom CMA page did here, and then you save it, and that's it. And then that will be included for inclusion of all future CMA pages. So you'll always have it here to add at a later time. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my custom CMA page simply by clicking on it. And now I'm going to expand the cover pages. So I have a couple of different options here for the cover page. I can add a cover page as it is, or I can add a cover page with an agent photo. So I'd like to include a photo, so I'm going to click on Cover Sheet with a agent photo. And here I can open up and select any of the subpages that I'd like, or I can select all the subpages simply by clicking on the page heading. So I'm going to click all those, and I'm going to choose to include all my comparable pages here. The static page, well, I'm going to just cherry pick a few of these. And let's go to my CMA map layout. I'm also going to include that. And what my CMA map layout, as you'll see, is essentially it will represent where my subject and my comparable properties are located on the map. All right, so with my selected pages, of course, I can change the order of any of these pages simply by clicking on the page that I'd like to change, and then I can navigate up or down with that particular page. Perhaps I'd like to take my custom page and put it a few down, and let's say these ones, and I'm holding the control key when I do this, I'd like to move up several spots. One other thing I'd like to point out on this page is we can actually set this page as our default pages to begin with. So if I don't want to continually add pages every single time I create a brand new CMA, I can simply set this as my default by clicking this link right here. Or if I want to restore back to the system default, I would simply click on Restore Defaults here. But for now, I'm just going to proceed to the next step of my CMA wizard, which is choosing my subject property. So we have a few different options here. What I can do is I can add all my fields manually for my subject property. And of course, I would go through one by one and fill out whichever ones I'd like here. I also have the ability to add my custom fields as well as my map location. Okay, but for now, I'm not going to do this approach. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fill from a search. And the other option we have is to fill it from one of our current MLS listings. So I would simply just add the MLS number in here and then fill from that particular MLS listing. Or I can do a specific criteria search, which is what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to click on this link here, and I'm going to look for all active residential properties. Let's do this different architect here with 3+ bedrooms and 2+ bathrooms. All right, so let's do a search. All right, so let's take a look at our thumbnail display just to allow us to maybe find a Nice piece of property here. All right, perfect. So we'll use this as our subject property, and we're going to fill the subject property from our selected. And as you can see, it fills in all that information. So let's move on to the cover. Now, of course, this is where we would add our contact information for this specific subject property. What I've done for my agent information is I've actually already filled in my agent information here. But one thing I'd like to point out is I don't actually have to set my agent information every single time I create a CMA. So what I've done is I filled this out once, and then I've set that as my default. If I'd like to change my picture, I can clear the photo and remove it altogether, or I can add a new photo from my hard drive simply by clicking on the Browse button here. But for now, I'm going to leave it as it is. And now I'm at the stage where I'd like to choose my comparables. And again, just to reiterate, I could have chosen my comparables from a search if I'd liked, but I'm not going to. I started this CMA from scratch, so I'm going to choose my comparables either from a cart, which I don't have any right now in my cart that I've saved. So I'm going to choose a, I'm going to do a search for the comparables that I'd like to include in the CMA. Now, of course, what I'd like to do is find listings that are comparable to my subject property. So I'm going to find some active, and I'm going to look for some solds, and I'm going to look for some expireds. And of course, they're going to be residential, the same sort of architectural style, with 3+ bedrooms and 2+ bathrooms. And of course, I can add some additional fields down here if I'd like, just like I did in the search criteria from an earlier search. But for now, let's just do this search. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go through and we're going to choose a couple of sold, choose a couple of expired, and we'll grab, let's grab a couple of active as well. There. Of course, as an agent, I would spend obviously a lot more time choosing my actives, my solds, and expired. But for now, let's just do these 6 selected ones. And we're going to click on Add Selected. And here we see our selected comparable listings. Let's view the map page that we've chosen to include. All right, so the next step of the wizard is a completely optional step, and that's the adjustment page. And essentially what we've done is we've given the agent the ability to further adjust the prices of our comparable properties. Now, they're all very, very similar because what we've done in our search is we've looked for properties that are very, very similar to our subject property. But this just gives us a way to further refine the prices of our comparable properties. So let me demonstrate that by looking at some of the features here. So let's, as an example, take a look at bedrooms and bathrooms. Well, we see here that our subject property has 6 bedrooms and some of our comparables have 5, 4, and 3 bedrooms. Well, what we can do is we can apply a value of, because it's a fairly high-end home, we can apply a value of, say, $15,000 for each bedroom. So let's put $15,000 here. And what we can see is that the comparables with less bedrooms, for example, the first one that has 5 bedrooms, will add $15,000 to the value of that comparable piece of property. Our subject property has 6. Our first comparable has 5, so we're going to add $15,000 because it has 1 less bedroom in it. The second comparable property has 3 bedrooms less, so we're going to add $45,000. That's $15,000 times 3. We're going to add $45,000 to the value of that particular comparable. But here's the other thing. We can also override any of these values as well. So if we want to change that $45,000 to, say, for example, $30,000, we could do that. But we indicate that by highlighting the field to show that it's been overridden. Of course, we can also do this for the full baths as well. Our subject property has 5 full baths in it. Our first comparable only has 3. Well, let's say the average value of a high-end bathroom is $20,000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add $40,000 to the price of this comparable because I see that it has 2 less bathrooms than my subject property. My other comparable right underneath has 4 less bathrooms, so it is going to come in at $80,000. I'm going to add $80,000 to the price of that particular comparable. Again, just to bring it in line with my subject property. It's completely optional. If I chose not to add anything to that particular one, I could simply do that and override it as well. So again, this is an optional step in the CMA wizard. It's just a tool to allow agents to bring their comparables more in line with their subject property. All right, so we're going to move on to the next step of the CMA wizard, which is the pricing. And again, this is an optional step, but what we do is essentially we crunch the numbers from our comparable prices and our adjusted comparable prices, and we give an indication of what the low, median, average, and high values are of the particular pieces of property. So this is a optional space for the agent to include a suggested list price of the property. So I suggest $490,000. And that's it. And then the agent would click on Finish. And this essentially would be a summary of all the steps that the agent has completed. A couple of things to note here. We have a View CMA link right here, and this is essentially opening up a PDF version of the CMA that we've just created. We're also able to email the CMA, and just like before, we don't actually email the CMA document. We email a link to the CMA document because we don't want to be sending huge files over the email and congesting their email program. So we simply send them a link and allow them to download the CMA at their convenience. A couple of other things I'd like to mention as well. We don't actually number the pages of the CMA, and what that does is it allows the agent to insert pages on their own. If they happen to be printing any of these CMAs, allows them to insert their own pages without the pages coming out of order. We also allow the ability to save the CMA along the way. There's a few different saving techniques. Every single time an agent progresses from one step of the wizard to another step, the CMA is automatically saved. We also have an auto save, which saves every few moments, as well as a manual save simply by clicking on the Save CMA button right here. All right, so if we want to view the CMA, simply by clicking on the CMA link, we can see the CMA that's been created.